Billy, as we head into the college football season, I really don't know what to make of your relationship with Mike Ryan around the University of Miami football stuff. He is a homer. He is now like a golden cane and an information source. He's a legitimate power broker. He's
a golden cane?
He's a power broker at the University of Miami, and he's been calling us out for a while, saying that you and I, who have trafficked off of University of Miami glory, haven't actually helped the football program any, while Mike has recently spent a good deal of time helping the football program. Now, you would argue that your documentaries help the football program, but he's talking about hands-on helping of the football program, which you are not doing right now.
Okay.
Well, you could help more. You could always help more. And Dan, I've read in the trade papers that you're the co-founder of a successful media company. You just sold a documentary to Amazon.
In the trades, huh?
Yeah. Dan.
Just one to Amazon? I was hoping to sell more than one to Amazon.
Well, it's quite disappointing, actually. I came away disappointed while everyone's tooting your horn.
I think, first of all, I think we're all homers. I think we all ultimately want the same thing, which is the Miami Hurricanes to relive some kind of former glory and win again. But I think we all help in our own ways. I think that Dan is right. I think the documentaries were probably of some help through the years in fundraising and recruiting during a time when the team was notoriously losing.
Certainly.
Yeah, I didn't mean to rhyme there.
We don't need to toot your horn here. We know what your credentials are.
But what I'm saying is, and you talk about the Miami Hurricanes all the damn time on this show, which only generates enthusiasm.
I'm just going to come out and ask it. How much are you willing to give right now?
Well, I'm willing to do...
In terms of thousands.
Pass the collection, please.
I'm willing to do NIL. Here's the thing, Mike, I'm here for this, okay? Thank you, because listen to this. If we're going to throw money behind something important, honestly, Billy comes in here, I'll ask you. Billy's been doing this. Love of game. Billy's been doing this for free. We pay him in pizza because Billy really cares about making sure Florida gets protected and the democracy gets protected.
Also, he just likes a microphone.
And, oh, my God, does he love a microphone.
And a pizza.
The only mic I like.
He likes it so much. Yeah, he likes it so very much. But your relationship with him confuses me because I don't know if you're on the same side.
Strained. It's strained, Dan.
We both love the University of Miami. One goes out of his way to kind of discredit them at every turn. And discredit people that are really trying to give and help the program.
But enough about Dan.
And then there's Billy, who thinks that the way of helping is just openly brawling on social media with some folks that are actually genuinely helping.
Openly
the
brawling.
Yep.
I just stated, dude, I came on, I stated facts.
He's a good
man. He's
a good man that's helping a lot.
I didn't even talk about your uncle. All I said was the
I'm
truth.
not doing this way with you, where people don't know what we're talking about,
either,
and you guys are speaking in code.
Right,
I'm
okay.
not doing this with you.
I just asked you how many thousands you were going to give, and you didn't answer.
I'm gonna make Meadowlark Media.
Thousands.
Meadowlark Media will commit. Mike,
yeah, we need big chunks of money.
This is what I'm telling you. I'm going to commit to NIL deals, but this is what I'm saying to you. When I say I want to support, yes, I'm going to commit right now, Meadowlark Media, to NIL deals, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it because the way I have been funding this segment through Meadowlark Media that doesn't just pay Billy and pizza is, listen to this. This is the way I've paid for it. To fund surveying for Ron McGill to run for office when Ron McGill has told us at every turn he doesn't want to run for office.
Money well spent.
So no, money not well spent. He won't do it. His wife has told us he won't do it. Not money well spent in the pursuit of throwing money into the air. What are you doing?
Let me tell you what'll make you far more happy.
I'd rather give it to a player on the team.
All right.
An appearance in the ACC championship game. Your presence at Charlotte is needed. Yeah. But more importantly, your money is needed. And NILs, I appreciate you, but that's simply not going to cut it. I'm just going to need a very big check. I'm talking about something that'll hurt a little bit. I can make sure it's tax deductible, though, if that helps.
Does Dan go west of the causeway unless he's going to the airport? Does he?
Dan, ultimately, in his heart of hearts, is a sports fan. And I know that this program connects with him in ways that nothing else does. And he wants to see Mario Cristobal be successful. He wants to recapture those glory days. And Dan, I am offering you an opportunity to take an active role in it.
Okay, well, for sure, I will agree to most of those things, except I will have to take it under advisement how big that check needs to be.
No, it needs to be big.
Okay, well, it's too general right now. It's too general.
We're putting a team together.
I understand. I will not be pressured by you at the end of the Because Miami segment.
I will ask you, how much just know that whatever you give, you're not getting any of the credit for it. It all goes to John Ruiz.
Hey.
You're going to have to be okay with that arrangement because I can assure you, whatever check you're writing, his is a lot bigger. All right? We got to take care of Papa.
Well, I will not do this going forward because I've not understood Billy's reticence on this throughout. Billy has been quiet on Ruiz. Ruiz is an attention seeker. Ruiz is people. They're reaching out. They want as many forums as possible. ESPN is giving him forum. He wants to buy his way into the game. Big booster man on money that may or may not be real, is real, kind of real.
It's definitely real.
Okay. Real money that's confusing to many people.
It was subject to all sorts of scrutiny, and it went public, guys. I don't know
at a time when things being real in currency seems less real than it's ever been.
I don't know why you keep doing this. His money is certainly real that he's donating.
But Billy has sat out. Billy every once in a while will lob or roll grenades at him on Twitter, but he's been suspiciously quiet.
Him.
You've been suspiciously quiet on this
while
calling him Mike's uncle because his name is Ruiz, which honestly is close to racism.
Last week, I didn't give my opinion. I simply reported what I was hearing from the highest levels of the university, which is that the university, while they are grateful for the enthusiasm and generosity around the football program, is not interested in a $500 million or more football stadium, particularly a tropical park. They are happy at Hard Rock. They are happy to direct their focus and fundraising into the athletic department itself, onto on-campus facilities, and to paying these coaches that, thank God, they finally committed to paying some real coaches some real money.
I can tell you, Dan, from being out at a closed practice.
Oh, we know, Mike.
Means
look,
it wasn't open to other.
No. At a closed practice. How did you get in?
Look at me, Lou.
No, don't do that to yourself because I do want. Look,
I'm a narcissist.
Wait, you hold on a second.
That the staff is about 3 times larger now under Mario Cristobal than it was under Manny Diaz.
Those people got to get paid. They need money to pay those people. So I simply stated those facts, and I got excoriated by Kane's whole Twitter for it. Okay?
No, don't do that.
And hang on, what they all said was, when did the athletic director ever say that he wasn't interested in a football stadium off campus or at Tropical Park? I said, when did he ever say he was? They pointed to some very diplomatic and political quote that he gave fresh off the plane at the Opa-locka airport. Guy didn't even know where he was. He had been a Miamian for 12 seconds, and they said, would you want a football stadium, near campus? And he said, well, I've always been lucky enough to play at schools that had their own stadium either on campus or adjacent to campus, and if there's an opportunity, we'll follow it to its logical conclusion. That's not we're interested. That's a very diplomatic answer.
It's a great answer by Radakovich.
I agree. But what other choice did he have was what I'm saying. It's a very political job that he has, and he gave a very political answer, having been in Miami all of 12 seconds. And then finally, Tuesday after practice, the press said, we've seen these renderings. There's this whole plot to take over Tropical Park, one of the largest and most popular parks in Miami-Dade County. What are your thoughts? And he basically just said what I said on this podcast last week. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. You're absolutely right. And I may surprise you with my take on this. Number one, I also don't want to dissuade people thinking big. I find it refreshing that there are renderings out there. Is it, look at me, Louie? Sure. Is it at all realistic right now? Not from where I can see it, but I don't want to squelch that type of creativity and that type of ambition. I really don't. I think we could use more of it. We could use more ridiculous ideas that we can practically dismiss out of pocket. That's fine. Personally, I love my game day experience. And I think what a lot of Canes fans are guilty of doing, whether they know it or not, is they think that Miami was good because of the Orange Bowl.
Hey.
They think Miami was good because of that atmosphere, and those teams were good because they had a hand in it. No, the teams were good because the players were really, really good, and those really good teams made that atmosphere. I love the Orange Bowl. It was a dangerous shithole of a stadium.
A dump.
It was a dangerous shithole, and right now, the University of Miami plays in what I call
it's a great facility,
the premier athletic complex on the planet. There's no we've gone into it ad nauseum. There's no other complex that can do what this one does. And I can tell you from working at ESPN, from having close friends that worked at College Game Day, that worked the very biggest games over the last 20 years, they told me the second loudest atmosphere they have ever heard in their entire careers was Miami Notre Dame at Hard Rock Stadium. And I'm telling you right now, if this football program gets the resources it needs, and the coaches get supported the way that they get supported, and they get these players over the course of time, that stadium is going to be talked about like the Orange Bowl. That atmosphere.
Well, that's the investment.
That atmosphere is going to be one of the best atmospheres in all of sports.
And it costs the university very little. They're very happy there. Over 40% of their season ticket holders come from Broward and Palm Beach County. So it is somewhat centrally located for the fan base. And I think the AD put it best when he said, not only do we have 10 or 11 years left on the contract, but we play, 6 or 7 days out of the year now, and our focus is on those 358 days a year that our student athletes are on campus, are in those facilities that they need to improve.
And Billy, I think you know this better than anybody. Like, the fact that it may not actually be a real thing, them going to tropical, it can still help because there's the chance of it. Miami is operating from a point.
There's not the chance of it.
No. Miami is. Let me explain how. And this actually ties into what we saw a little bit, if I can theorize, what we saw with Freedom Park a little bit. Is Miami has zero leverage when it comes to their lease at Hard Rock Stadium. They have nowhere realistically to go. So it can only help the University of Miami from
But there's not an actual chance you can support a pipe dream, Mike. Yeah. Look,
I think Freedom Park is actually the more realistic of the leverage.
I want to stop Billy on a couple of things. Why did you do the Canes Hole thing? Canes Hole Twitter. These people are dying to be relevant as a sports business. Passed down from their abuelos and their papis from a different time, like this.
Why are you taking exception to that? Yeah, we're Canes holes.
Canes
we're the fucking worst.
Canes,
they're terrible. We're awful.
I didn't even say that. But.
Oh man, we're garbage.
I am what I am noticing, and what I want to point out to the audience, because Mike is now credentialed on the insider front. He's connected inside the organization. He advocates for the organization. He's trying to do it differently. He's an agent for change, and he's gotten in the middle of it with his money, with his mouth, with his reporting, and everything else. He wants to believe in the idea that we can dismiss his stupidity, the idea of a spaceship saucer stadium that John Ruiz is going to build that floats over Miami in some magical, mystical future.
Tropical Park looked gorgeous.
That becomes leverage for
I agree with that.
Better than what Mike is calling.
Could have used some luxury boxes, though. I was going in there. I'm like,
where
am I going to sit?
It's all science fiction. It doesn't matter, but it looks gorgeous.
What Mike is calling a facility for the ages, that Mike is right. If you put Alabama in there, holy shit, what a sound it would make. Like, of course, if you put the winning in there, and they're making the hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that now requires, and it's with this man's money. And Mike is asking you, Billy, as cynical documentarian, to support the program.
That means supporting those that are actually got their hand in the dirt and are actively helping. There's been a lot of bad rhetoric when it comes to Uncle Johnny, and I don't like it. Because he has put his money where his mouth is. He is actually changing the lives of kids. And it's not like other places where you don't know this ambiguous thing where Jimbo Fisher comes out and says, we don't even really do NIL. Then where are you getting the dough, dude? Like, you know exactly where these kids are getting their money. There's actually, he flew out to Australia. A crew went to Australia and filmed the commercial in Australia with Lou Headley so he could actually get the money there because of a complicated visa issue. He can't make money here.
Billy, I don't want to fight this guy because he's the new renegade future of cheap, dirty money trying to buy a program and trying to do it within the auspices of their silly justice that doesn't mean anything.
You guys know better than anybody. We are a historical outlier. We have a student body of 17,000 kids. We don't have this huge alumni base. To be talked about against the likes of Ohio State and held to that standard is actually ridiculous when you see the numbers. We don't have the resources, and you have one person out there that is giving in a way that is really, honestly, just absolutely overshadowing everybody else. No one is giving to the point to help the football program specifically like John Ruiz.
It's almost like the point of his money is to buy into the big booster game. That's what it feels like.
But that's what boosters do. I don't begrudge him
that. He loves the program. But he loves the program. Yes, might he like seeing his name out there and being associated with the guy that helps?
Yes, of course.
Well,
that's part of.
But that's not a bad thing.
I mean,
it's not what others do. It makes other people that do give even more.
I don't trust him with it. I don't
things.
Trust him with it to represent the things. Look, man, I do not trust any Juan come lately who says, and now I'm from Columbus.
Now who's being racist?
I run the program.
Yeah, you apologize right now.
For this.
His name is John.
No.
Every Juanito come lately.
Hey, man. No, you can't do that.
From Columbus.
I'm demanding an apology.
How dare you?
I said quite clearly, and I'll repeat it, his generosity and his enthusiasm, I think, is outstanding. I think it helps the program that people get excited about it.
Look at us.
I think the problem is,
you're great.
Let's focus there.
Let's end it there.
This week, let's focus there.
Billy, there is no stadium.
This week,
the university doesn't want a war with the county commission.
Right.
They don't want a war.
Billy was right.
They don't want a war with the neighbors. They don't want a stadium there. And to Dan's point,
I don't want a stadium there.
To Dan's point, on the eve, for 12 years, I've been saying the University of Miami does not prioritize football. They do not put their money where their mouth is. They use it as an ATM machine.
They're doing it now.
And you were right last year. They did a 180-degree turn. Thank God. They did the right thing finally, and they made a commitment. And right there, your uncle was there with his publicist at that press conference announcing a state that he was going to bulldoze a school and build a football stadium. And now on the eve, but that was Mario's moment. That was Mario's moment. That was the University of Miami's moment. That was the program's moment. Here we are again on the eve of a football season. Mario's moment, his debut at his alma mater as the head football coach, his dream job. The moment belongs to the University of Miami. And again, people are trying to steal their thunder. And I don't think that's beneficial for the program.
I'm just going to hold up a number to this window, and you just nod it when you can give it to me.
Okay. Wow. That's a big number. That's a big number.
Dan, yours is double that.
What is this, the firm? What is going on here?
It's a big number. Mine is double that. Again, the
this
money
one may not be tax deductible.
The money that we have spent, Billy, on failed zookeeper campaigns will not be something I will tolerate anymore. We have to spend our money better than this. This is an exciting week for the University of Miami.
It's an exciting season.
And we have not broken it up enough, or broken it down enough in the local hour. But there are other things that I want to get to with Billy that are Miami related. No, Billy, we're going to have to figure out a way to contribute to Mike's cause here. But it's not going to be able to go in Ruiz's pocket. I don't know how we're going to figure that part out.
It doesn't go into Ruiz's pocket. It goes into the pocket of those that are actually on the front lines helping this football program. And if I have a finder's fee, cool. Like
what? I'm sorry. What, you get a VIG? What? You get a commission?
The number that I actually need's a lot lower.
Let's talk a little bit, Billy, because I've been wanting to talk to you for a while about Marco Rubio, and for whatever the reason is, for many, many months now, we have not gotten to it, because one of the reasons I value this segment with you is because you have all of the history and all of the details that many people misremember or don't care to remember at all. And you've been watching this guy slither and snivel his way through the political system in Miami, and you have where some of the bodies are buried. So what can you tell us about Marco Rubio's latest fun on social media and elsewhere?
Well, it's been a pretty impressive story arc. You know, the guy, local kid, wound up in government in a very obscure little city called West Miami, located in West Miami. Finds his way to becoming the Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives. I think possibly its youngest speaker in history. I'm not certain of that. And then and is now the senior senator from the great state of Florida. I mean, it's a pretty extraordinary and meteoric rise. I think the problem is it starts with and proceeds with and grows with a lie. Everything about him is a lie, is hypocrisy, is something disingenuous. And I posted a
Can you give us facts, though, as opposed to, yes, you can call somebody a liar, but can you just give us the facts that make a liar to be a truth?
Well, let's start from the beginning there, and then I'll get into this funny tweet, which is that his story has always been, in order to relate to and connect with the extraordinary stories of the Cuban-American exile community in Miami, has been my family escaped the tyranny of Fidel Castro on the day or the eve of the revolution, like Godfather Part 2. They fled the country for the freedom of Miami. That's a lie. His family departed Cuba in 1956. They may have been fleeing tyranny, but they were fleeing the right-wing tyranny of the dictator Batista, not the left-wing tyranny of the dictator Fidel Castro. So the headline of his bio was "Escaping Castro." They did not escape Castro. That is a lie. He had to actually delete and amend his official Senate bio on his public website as a result of this lie. But this was a lie he told for quite some time in order to sell into the passions and the emotions that carries in order to get elected and advance in politics as he has. But the foundation is a lie. And I think the other really important thing to remember when people are turning away from the swamp and are rejecting the deep state and don't want seasoned, entrenched, corrupt, lifelong politicians feeding at the public trough. Marco Rubio came out in a very stern interview on Fox News, shitting all over President Biden's student loan debt relief program, which I think is such a fabulous idea, and I argued last week didn't go far enough to help enough people enough. But he came out and he said Rubio's argument was, do my plan. I got elected in the Senate. I had over $100,000 in student loans. I'm not really sure where that's from. He went to like a commuter college. He went to Santa Fe Community College. And then I'm guessing it's from law school at the University of Miami. That's the only place he could have probably got.
So you don't know if that's a lie. You don't think it's an educational lie.
No, but by the way, students also need loans to live. I don't think he could afford.
But I'm asking you what I'm asking you to do, because people get tired of you just throwing lies out there, and you put much of the history behind it. But please, what you're calling a lie, explain to people why it's a lie.
I'm not saying it's a lie. What I'm saying is what he said was I had $100,000 in student loans. I have no reason to doubt that. But what he said, what I did was I got elected to Senate. And I got a book deal, and I used my advance on that book deal to pay off my...
Do what I did. Write a book as a...
And I tweeted...
Pull yourself up by the book straps.
Oh, no. Oh, there's got to be a cart for that.
The sound? You want me to get
you won't even do it. You won't even stretch it.
Is it a loser game show sound, or would it be the Hakeem Nicks sound? If he's asking for a cart for that, that's Neil Rogers right there. You think that somebody's going to go and pull a cart out of a wall for that?
Radio terminology has changed since then, Billy.
A cart? He just used a cart.
But he's got to stretch over. Look, he's stretching over to the cart. He's
going to the computer. But what do you want me to get for pulling you up by the book straps? You want me to get a laugh or the loser game show sound?
Roy's the producer. Roy.
Okay, okay.
So
that's a lot of work for the cart.
He had to go there with a cart machine.
Yeah.
The cart machine's in the corner. It always is.
Cut film and everything.
Anyway, you were saying
$7.90. It was in the corner. The cart machine.
You were saying.
I retweeted that Rubio interview. Pull yourself up by your book straps. And I wrote, Rubio hasn't had a real job since he babysat his brother-in-law's cocaine stash house in 1985. His sugar daddy, Miami car oligarch, and former Philadelphia Eagles owner Norman Brayman financed his entire political life and even bought him a teaching job at FIU. So that went viral, that tweet. I guess a lot of people don't know this history of Marco Rubio, which starts, of course, with the big lie that his family fled Fidel Castro's Cuba as opposed to Batista's Cuba.
You mentioned that.
It's a different big lie.
What is it?
It's a different big lie.
It's a pretty giant lie, though. The starting point on this, okay, so you've made your point.
In Miami, it's a pretty big lie.
The starting point on this is that from the beginning through the ancestral roots of not just his campaign, but his family life, the whole thing's a mask. We got it. What's the next lie?
The Rubio family spent a summer. This is what people seem to be intrigued by. The Rubio family spent a summer living in Marco Rubio's brother-in-law's cocaine stash house, which was a central hub or a main hub in a $75 million cocaine trafficking operation. The extra room in which they stored kilos of cocaine, would cut down those kilos and shove them into cigarette boxes in order to smuggle them around the country.
Many people of my ethnicity and their parents and their grandparents were doing that in 80s Miami in some form.
Very common, almost impossible for a family not to know when they have a family member in the cocaine industry. They don't have a job, but there's a sudden burst of wealth. They start spreading that wealth around the family. There's property and real estate.
Miami's built on it.
Absolutely. And so, by the way, ain't no shame in that game. It's part of our history. But Rubio is denied knowing anything about it while they lived in a cocaine stash house for part of a summer in West Kendall in 1985. Again, No shame in it, but just say
in a neighborhood that was filled with stash houses,
filled with the entire.
It's
real
part of the
market.
economy of many of us. If we go deep down in the Marco Rubio past, we will find that there's probably a drug dealer somewhere in the family. Because in many of our families, I will find un abuelo. I can't believe it. Really, you had a cocaine brick hidden there. Didn't know that.
But that's not true of just Cuban Americans or Colombian Americans. If you were in Miami at that time, your business was directly or indirectly helped or flourished or buttressed by the cocaine industry. There's absolutely no doubt. Marco Rubio went back to that house every single week and washed their 7 dogs for $10 a pop. That's $70 a week he was making in $1985 for washing dogs, and he spent it that season to buy 8 home game tickets to the Miami Dolphins. He got to go to all. So even the Miami Dolphins were benefiting in that way from the trickle-down economics of the cocaine business. Well, a lot of Dolphins were benefiting in a lot of ways from the cocaine business, but that's just another way. And this was a massive cocaine trafficking operation. Again, there's no shame in it, but this denial, this lying.
You can't say there's no shame in it because it's gone viral, at least in part because you want to lash him with the shame of the hypocrisy of being a conservative who comes from this and pretends not to come from this.
And a conservative who has railed against light sentencing for criminals, especially drug traffickers, when his own brother-in-law served about 10 or 11 years of a 35-year sentence, and then Marco Rubio wrote him a letter of recommendation to become a real estate developer. Again, none of this is a problem unless you're out there saying the rules are for everybody but me and my family.
What are the facts behind some of the other lies, though? Because you know the entire history of this. I don't believe the people listening to this, Billy, understand the reason I've been wanting to talk to you about Marco Rubio for a long time is you have your culprits around here that you bash. And for some reason, this guy here has escaped your attention for a while. And I want everyone listening to this to understand what his factual history is. Try not to soak it in calling him a liar. Just tell me where the facts aren't consistent.
But it's not just the lies. It is the hypocrisy, and it is the idea that this is a guy who has somehow pulled himself up by his bootstraps, that everybody should use him as a model for what to do. Because we don't all have sugar daddies like Norman Brayman, who who wouldn't spend the money on Reggie White, but would make it rain.
Tell people about former Eagles owner Norman Brayman, who is a very successful human being in South Florida, one of our richest men for a very long time.
Yes.
That person has done what with his power while in Miami?
I mean, he has spent upwards of $10 million supporting Marco Rubio, both politically and personally, whether it's gifting money to FIU to hire Marco Rubio as a professor, whether it's hiring Marco Rubio's wife to work at a charity, whether it's supporting his political committee, supporting his campaigns. Marco Rubio simply doesn't get to the Senate and get a book deal to pay off his student loans without a sugar daddy in Norman
And Brayman has used him this way. Why?
Well, he also got over $10 million in PPP loans, a program that Marco Rubio, a socialism program, mind you, that Marco Rubio has taken great credit and in fact did advocate and lobby President Trump for. So, but what I'm saying is it always comes back to the oligarchs in some way or another. And PPP is just the latest example of that. I think the more important point is that we don't all get to live off of benefactors and get to set ourselves up for success. And the idea that people shouldn't get a $10,000 or $20,000 forgiveness on a portion of what might be a 6-figure student loan obligation with onerous interest, and they should instead do as Marco Rubio does. This is an insane hypocrisy and double standard. We also have a guy whose BFF and whose roommate, when they were in the House of Representatives in D.C., his roommate, who he actually co-owned a house that wound up in foreclosure in Tallahassee when both of them were in Florida state government. This is a guy who, in David Rivera, who is a career criminal who became a politician, which is a very common thing that we have here in Miami.
We have so many of those.
Yeah. Well, it's not like absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's that criminals go, what's my best bet here? How can I best navigate the world? Well, if I'm elected, I can do all kinds of crazy illegal shit and get away with it. And David Rivera is the living, breathing embodiment of this. And he was notoriously known as Marco Rubio's bag man when they co-owned this house and were roommates together in Tallahassee. He is a guy who was one of the OGs on the crime that we'll talk about more today, which is the ghost candidate schemes that the Republicans use to siphon votes away. They illegally finance ghost candidates to siphon votes away from Democrats in elections. So
we will talk to that.
We
will talk to Matt Dixon from Politico about that later in the show.
So this guy committed an outrageous crime for which both of his co-conspirators, who he recruited into this scam, both of them went to prison for this crime. But Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, the lead prosecutor, the state attorney, people might call her a district attorney, but in Florida it's known as a state attorney. She had a 54-page indictment, a report from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement hanging this guy for these crimes, and she let the statute of limitations run out. And then our U.S. attorney down here in the Southern District of Florida let the statute of limitations run out. You better believe that David Rivera's connections to Marco Rubio had something to do with that. David Rivera is now the subject of an intense federal investigation because it turns out he may have laundered $50 million for the socialist regime in Venezuela. He got paid $50 million to, I don't know, to lobby, to do some work. The reason why I don't know is he never did any work for it. But all of the money wound up in some criminal billionaire's yacht company over here, over there. So people are going, well, wait, if he wasn't paid to do any actual work and all this money filtered through Venezuela into all of these other people and enterprises, what was that for? Now there's a major federal investigation, but the man still has walked between the raindrops, has not been indicted. And this is Marco Rubio's best friend who is allegedly laundering money for Maduro and the socialist regime of Venezuela. So once again, people who rail against socialism, people who rail against dictators and authoritarianism in every other country in the world except for our own are benefiting from the largesse of these criminal regimes like the narco-kleptocracy in Venezuela. This is Marco Rubio.
Matt Dixon is going to join us here in a couple of minutes so that...
With all that said, do we have an update on poll numbers with Val Demings versus Marco Rubio? That seat is up for grabs right now.
I believe the latest poll has Marco Rubio up by about 3 points. Marco Rubio is polling at 49%, and Val Demings, the retired sheriff in Central Florida in Orange County, she is polling at 46%. So well within the margin of error there.
Anything else we need to know about Rubio before this, before Matt Dixon joins us in a couple of minutes and before people start voting on some of this stuff? Just the facts, please.
I think his other big lie was that when he ran for president in the Republican primary in 2016, he said he was resigning from the Senate and that he was going to run for president. And when he lost that primary to Donald Trump, he said, I will be a private citizen come January, meaning when the new Congress and Senate was sworn in. And instead, he said on second thought, I am going to run for re-election in my Senate seat. And there was a string of videos and tweets of him saying, I am not running for office. If I'm not president, I will be a private citizen. And the guy just absolutely lied about it. And even worse, what he did was he used the Pulse tragedy, which was the Orlando LGBTQIA club that was the victim of a mass shooter who murdered dozens of people while the police waited outside. And Marco Rubio said he was so moved by this tragedy that he was going to try to do something about it. And what has he done about it? He has done absolutely nothing. He has not helped to ban the weapons of war that people can walk into a store in Florida and buy. In some states, you can buy them from a vending machine, regardless of your criminal background.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, and he has done nothing about it.
A vending machine.
And all we have seen...
I've never seen a vending machine with guns in it.
Go to Texas, baby. But I will tell you that perhaps that was hyperbolic, Dan. But what I will tell you is that he has done nothing about it. We have seen a proliferation of mass shootings in this country. The last time Marco Rubio, in fact, even bothered to have a town hall meeting with his constituents, and the reason why he hasn't had one again is because he was embarrassed on national television by the brave students who survived the Parkland massacre, okay, at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And that's why he was literally humiliated on television by high school students and said, I will never face my constituents again because I am a liar and I am an embarrassment and I'm doing nothing to help anybody other than his plan, which I don't know how this plays in Florida, is to destroy, dismantle, and privatize Social Security and Medicare. So in a democracy, the people get the government they deserve. And if they reelect these Republicans, they are not going to have freedom. They are going to have no books. They're going to have no abortion. They're going to have no health care. They're going to have no Social Security. They're going to have no Section 8 housing in Hialeah to help people afford. They're not going to have Obamacare anymore. They're not going to have the right to peacefully protest. They might not even have the right to vote anymore if the Republicans have anything to do with it. I don't see how that's the free state of Florida, but good luck.
Matt Dixon joins us next. If you've been listening to us for a while, you know that I care about journalism. You know that Billy cares about journalism. You know that journalism is an advocacy, really, that is in pursuit of and in protection of the truth against a whole lot of people who don't seem to care about it right now as politics run amok with total rampant corruption baked into the bread of how our systems are built. Matt Dixon is a legitimate journalist. And I tell you this because I think a lot of people don't make the distinction on he's not here to argue on behalf of a side. He is not here to be red or blue. He is somebody who reports things with great diligence and with vetting. He breaks a number of different stories and has over the years, and he's been a bureau chief for the Florida Times-Union. He's still fighting the good fight in newspapers. So he's doing so for Politico now. He's the Florida bureau chief. With that as introduction, Matt, and thank you. I appreciate your work and the work that Billy cares about here. What DeSantis is doing with voting and where he's targeting people and how overt some of this stuff is as an attack on democracy and fairness. Can you just take us through factually what is happening here, and we'll figure out why it's offensive?
Well, it will shock you to note that there's political scandal in Florida yet again. I mean, it's a state that rarely has that. But in this go around, it's Governor DeSantis, I guess 2 weeks ago, held a big press conference in Broward County. There was 15, 20 law enforcement officers. He was going to make a splashy announcement related to voting. What he did is he announced that this brand new office he created to investigate elections, sort of has broad authority to investigate elections, had found 20 felons who had ineligibly voted. And these folks, was a third-degree felony, up to $5,000 fines, 5 years in prison. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which is Florida's top law enforcement agency, arrested these folks in their homes. And it was a sort of big splashy announcement and proof that there has been voter fraud in Florida, and sort of backed up a lot of the talking points that Republicans and some others have had about voting fraud being kind of rampant. And as it turns out, if you kind of peel the layers of the onion back, these folks did vote ineligibly. That's not being disputed by anyone. But there's a couple things that happened before that. And so they would register, that these felons would register at voter registration drives or however they did it. And the registration is supposed to get flagged at the Department of State, the Florida Department of State, which oversees elections. And that's supposed to get flagged, and they're supposed to say, hey, this person's a felon, they shouldn't be voting. And these 20 cases, they slip through the cracks. So their local county elections officials send them these voter cards saying, hey, you are cleared to vote. This is a government card, a government-sanctioned card that says you are eligible to vote. So they went out and voted. It was voting ineligibly without question, but the gray area comes in because they were told by officials they're supposed to be able to trust that they were allowed to vote.
In 2018, Florida voters passed what was known as Amendment 4 to allow felons in the state of Florida who were not involved in murder or sex crimes to allow to be reinstated and regain the right to vote. Florida, I think, had more disenfranchised voters as a result of felony convictions than any state. Over nearly 65% of Florida voters passed this state constitutional amendment, and it's been kind of a mess ever since. The state of Florida made it almost impossible for felons to know whether or not they're eligible, to know whether or not they have any fines, how much those fines are, and how even to pay for them. 11 million people then voted in Florida in the 2020 election. And there's been little spotty fraud cases here and there, most prominently in the Villages down here in Dade County. But they made 20 arrests. One of these people, a SWAT team showed up at 6 a.m. with a chopper and armed police officers. Guy was in his underwear. Sorry, Matt.
I would know. All we know is of one so far. That gentleman's got an attorney free of charge. Like it's not a public defender. They actually found him a real attorney. So he's the one who brought that story to us. There's still a lot unknown about the circumstances around. So one for sure, you're 100% right, but we don't know the circumstances or some of the color around the 19 other arrests. But
we do know that many of them registered to vote, were approved by their county elections officials who went and ran these names through the state and then were given a voter registration card. And in good faith, not with any malicious intent to defraud or vote or commit voter fraud, went out and voted, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these people, these are not voter fraud masterminds. The court documents and affidavits that they gave as part of their interviews with the authorities, most of them said they weren't high school graduates. There was one woman who actually needed help during the interview because she told the authorities she really wasn't able to read or write. These interviews happened in early August, and then a lot of the people who were the subject of this were arrested a few weeks later. So the idea that they're criminal masterminds are trying to cobble together some sweeping voter fraud scheme just doesn't withstand any sort of scrutiny.
And as you referenced earlier, Ron DeSantis did after the 2020 election, which was known as one of the most smoothly run elections, certainly here in the state of Florida, nonetheless started this elections integrity unit, this elections police squad, the first of its kind in the country, and funded them over $1 million in budget, and then has this sensational press conference about these 20 arrests. And then they blamed the local elections officials, the county elections officials, said that they failed to do their due diligence and discover the eligibility or ineligibility of these one-time felons.
Well, I think it's a sort of a mechanism to give his administration some space from this. So when asked about it, and they really don't answer many questions, we often don't get answers. But the one statement they sent, I believe it was last Thursday, was this very lengthy statement about how local election supervisors at the county level, these are actually elected officials at the county level, were allowing this to happen or encouraging felons to vote or just screwing up and essentially not doing their job and verifying. And we've talked to 5 or 6 local supervisors, including the supervisor up in Leon County, which is in the northern part of the state, who runs the statewide association that represents local elected officials, and they've all said that's kind of bogus. They don't have access to the sort of law enforcement databases and the things that the state have and use to verify this stuff. So local elections officials, it's not their responsibility to the deep dive vetting on these registrations. It is the DeSantis administration or whatever governor is in control. It is the responsibility of the state.
And then, in fact, Peter Antonacci, who is he, and what message did he send to these local elections officials?
Yeah, Pete's a longtime government hand, served a lot of high-profile roles for Republican governors. He was actually the Broward County supervisor of election when some of these felons registered, and it turns out that the governor hasn't placed any blame on Pete because Pete now was appointed to run his statewide elections investigation office.
Hang on. I'm sorry. I just want to clarify what you just said. So Pete, there was an elections supervisor in Broward that was removed. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then Pete was appointed to lead.
Who removed the Broward election supervisor?
It was right at the intersection of Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis. I think maybe Rick. Okay. Honestly, my timeline. It's been a few years, but it was either Rick Scott or Ron DeSantis.
Why? Wait a minute. No. Please, I'm gonna reprimand Billy here, Matt, for putting you really in a terrible self-involved position.
I put myself in terrible positions all the time.
No, Billy.
Yeah, you should have seen him on Twitter yesterday.
Billy.
Oh boy.
Has questions that he has the answers to. and you did not articulate them correctly. So, Billy, you tell us what instead of using your guest to do your bidding for you, just tell us what the answer to your question is, so that we don't do this dance where you're just using him to spout what you believe. I was
told very specifically to not do any research before coming on. Like, I was told explicitly, do no research before you come on.
First of all, you never ask a question you don't already know the answer to.
Stop manipulating him. Listen. No, I need to explain this to people because they take Billy wrong. Billy is a carnival barker, and he doesn't actually have to abide or live by the rules of journalism, though he attempts to, and often does so well. But Matt Dixon is legitimate, credible journalist. He doesn't make
He's wearing gingham. He's a serious man.
He doesn't make these cocaine documentaries, and because I introduced him as being fact-based, as I keep getting killed for putting you on this platform because you lean so far left that
I'm leaning right now.
That you are a fire hose of rage, and it sounds the same note all the time. Matt, you tell us. I don't want to hear from Billy here. You tell us what's happening with DeSantis here, why it is wrong and appalling, without getting into the thicket of the details. Why people should understand that this is
details don't matter.
This is not American. This is not anybody's.
He's not going to answer that
this
question.
This is not anybody's idea of the Constitution.
He's not going to answer that question. What kind of question is that?
Hey, I'll answer the questions I want to answer. Billy, come on, man. The reason that I think people should care about it is because it was, was kind of a dog and pony show. I mean, there was this huge splashy press conference with law enforcement, and while no one is disputing what the DeSantis administration has been saying is two things. They've been saying that opponents of this want murderers and felony sex offenders to vote, which is a total straw man. There are organizations who do think felons should vote, but they're not main players in this conversation. So that's a total straw man. And another one they've talked about is the local elections officials, which we've talked about. So sort of the two arguments they've put forward reluctantly just don't hold water. And meanwhile, there are 20 former felons who did their time. They did terrible crimes. No one's arguing that, but they did the time the justice system gave them. And now they're reentering the criminal justice system with very little resources for, reasons that were certainly not malicious and generally they lacked intent, as best we can tell.
The bottom line is the state told these people they could vote. They didn't know whether they could vote or not. They registered to vote. They were told by their county officials who consulted with state officials who said, here is your voter registration card. They went out and voted, and then they got rounded up and arrested for doing what they thought in good faith they had the right to do. The governor then has a press conference saying, look, we found all these criminals. And let me ask you this. There was at least 3 people arrested in the Villages, a Republican stronghold, for people who voted twice, deliberately and maliciously in an effort to stuff the ballot box. Did DeSantis have a press conference there?
Well, and a notable difference there is that, as you mentioned, they voted twice. They double voted, which clearly indicates intent. The folks in the 20 people, there's no evidence that there was any intent with the people who were just arrested with the high profile round of arrests.
Right, but did DeSantis have a press conference in the Villages about these criminals?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, but Billy, your larger point, okay, and I get it, okay, your larger point is that all of this, when you start getting into the thicket of the minutia of how contaminated, corrupt, and evil all of this is, this all feels like the hoarding of people by state militia that are sort of trampling without caring about government rights, human beings because they are felons. All the stuff that's happening in politics right now doesn't feel very free. Like, this is ultimately the place that your rage comes from is there, is it not?
Well, when you say you were the free state of Florida and it's always no, that's freedom isn't no. Can I consult with my doctor and have a medical procedure? No. The government says no. Can I peacefully protest on the street? No. Can I vote? No. When the answer is always no, you can't do these things, then that's not freedom. Matt, let me ask you. We've had now multiple cases where what they call ghost candidates or shadow candidates have been on the ballot in an effort to siphon votes away, where money has inappropriately changed hands to finance these candidates. FP&L has been behind a lot of this dark money here. Has DeSantis had a press conference about that? Has he threatened FP&L in the manner in which he threatened Disney, for example?
No, I mean, 2 points there. There hasn't been a press conference, anything high profile, and they really didn't even comment on it when asked about it. They've been asked about it a bunch of times since the last elections, the 2020 election cycle, when that stuff you're referencing happened. And there isn't really a definitive DeSantis position on ghost candidates or anything sort of coherent from the administration responding to that sort of stuff. A lot of it is still the subject of legal challenges, which is what what a lot of people in power will generally rely on when they don't want to comment on something. Let the process play out, but there really hasn't been a comment, high profile or otherwise.
But so are these 20 criminal cases. These are pending. This is pending litigation that the governor essentially put his thumb on the scale.
That's why I framed it as people in power who don't want to talk about something. Right. That's it's a very, very subjective use of ongoing investigation.
And we had incidents down here in Miami-Dade County, which I'm sure have repeated themselves around the state, where you had operatives who went into apartment buildings where elderly people lived, where lifelong Democrats were duped into changing their voter registration, their party affiliation from Democrat to Republican. They were deliberately fooled by folks so that when they go to vote in a primary, for example, most recently in August, they find that their party affiliation has been changed out from under them after decades. Did Ron DeSantis have a press conference about that fraud and investigating that?
You're doing the same thing again where you know the answer. No, wait a minute. This is unfucking believable, this guy. Like, honest to God. No, can you stop this, please?
I'm leading the witness.
No,
what
but
am I doing?
I am not having this person on just so that you can, like, this is a legitimate journalist, and you're sitting here.
I'm asking for factual. I'm asking for answers to factual questions.
You're in here like it's a trial, and you're a lead attorney leading the witness. Please, let me.
This is the strangest deposition I've ever been a part of.
Let me backtrack for a second, because I really do. This is frustrating. It's really frustrating. Matt, you are somebody who the bid rigging and collusion in the Department of Transportation, the budget item that saved the tobacco industry hundreds of millions of dollars. You are doing researched, investigative, hard work to just show people, hey, do you realize how wrong this is? And you are losing. Nobody cares. Like, you're sitting here fighting this fight of just like, can you believe this shitty thing is happening? And you present it to people and you win awards and nobody cares.
It's increasing less that nobody cares rather than the outrage is the point. So there's a cohort of politicians in politics now where getting a even if it's a very legitimate and factual sort of negative story about you isn't something you push back or fight anymore. You turn it into a fundraising email and you sort of just blast the source of the information. So it's even morphing beyond nobody pays attention to, well, heck, we like negative stories. We can raise a lot of small dollar political contributions off this and sort of turn up the outrage meter. It's an era of politics where outrage is the point sometimes.
Well, but if Billy's coming on here every week and we're yelling and screaming, and this can't be right, and never mind your political affiliation, this just can't be right. Like nobody reasonable and sound mind would think this is right, that we're weaponizing everything to such extremes that, hey, felons, we invite you to vote, and when you vote, we're going to round you up and tell you haven't voted. Like nobody would say that's right. Like that. Whose political party does that support? The idea of doing that to people who have already served the time for their crimes and then just not allowing them the American human decency of being able to vote.
I mean, I guess I would say that the governor and his followers are certainly supportive of the move. So I don't know how you'd characterize that as traditional or otherwise, but there is definitely a large percentage of the governor's supporters who are in favor of the move is sort of law and order and rooting out voter fraud. And that's the message that we're hearing from them.
And this is precisely my point, not Matt's point, is that exploiting law enforcement in a partisan fashion is by definition dictatorial. It's authoritarian. And you look at the United Nations just had a committee, for crying out loud, the Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination, who released a report saying that Florida's quote-unquote anti-riot law infringes on the right to protest. The United Nations is now saying that DeSantis's and Florida's laws are designed to discriminate against people of color and to violate the right to free protest.
And it works. But, and it's working for DeSantis. The things that he is doing.
People are scared.
He might get derailed by abortion, but whatever.
He doesn't want to talk about that, as Matt said, they don't like to, whatever they don't want to talk about, they just don't talk about. And this adage of there's no such thing as bad publicity didn't used to apply to politics, but now most certainly does, because they get their outrage cycle. Even if all these laws ultimately get found unconstitutional by the courts, even if ultimately all 20 of these cases of these poor folks get dropped, he still had his press conference with his 20 scalps on the wall, and he still gets to fundraise. Look, I discovered the election fraud or the voter fraud. But the bottom line is, the only voter fraud he cares about is when it's people who he perceives to be voting Democratic. When it's Republican voters voting twice intentionally committing voter fraud in the villages, he doesn't care, or he wants to put that under the rug. When it's people fraudulently changing the voter registration of Democrats to Republican, he doesn't say anything. When it's shadow candidates and it's a corporation in the state of Florida who has a legal monopoly that very much the legislature and the governor could screw with, like they screwed with Disney because they didn't like their political speech, they don't say anything as long as FP&L is funding ghost candidates that interfere with Democrats and not with Republicans. That's not, I believe in equal application of the law. I believe that nobody is above the law, but I also believe that politicians should not exploit the law for partisan purposes.
Matt, I'm sorry that you had to endure all of that. I had you on as a guest. He's rude. He just wanted to talk and pretend like you were here to, I mean, just unfucking believable, the narcissism of this dude and I'm sorry he did all of that to you, but thank you for your credentials and your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys.
Our thanks to Matt Dixon. We're going to have him on again so he can express his own thoughts as opposed to being puppeteered by this bozo over here who will not allow anybody the free space to do a show that isn't fire hose spitting in every direction. Thank you, Billy.
Cocaine's.